A rich woman's car broke down. But that day, it wasn't the tire that got fixed, it was fate. And the boy who helped her. 1 year later, he stood on stage, inspiring a crowd. This isn't just a story. It's proof that one act of kindness can change everything. He wasn't running late. He was just tired of always running. Luca's legs pushed the pedals like they had done 1,000 times before. Same turns, same roads, same weight on his back, bread and soup, wrapped in a clean cloth for his grandmother. He didn't mind the ride. It was the heaviness in his chest that wore him down. Not from the hill ahead, but from the choices behind. Dropped out of college, skipped dreams to stay home, worked whatever job came first, dishwasher, gardener, anything that paid. Today's shift had ended late. The bakery had needed help loading crates. The pay was short, but he didn't complain. He never did. The street narrowed as he turned into the final stretch. His grandmother's small house was 2 minutes away. That thought alone made the tiredness in his legs ease a bit. Then he slowed. A black car, too clean for these roads, sat awkwardly across the bend. Steam puffed gently from under the hood. One tire slumped flat against gravel. He coasted forward, eyes narrowing. Someone stood beside it, pacing, phone held high, frustration written across their body like a billboard. This wasn't normal. Luca tightened his grip on the handlebar. He hadn't planned to stop again. But this was hard to ignore. Expensive cars look funny when they break down. Luca approached slowly, one foot dragging against the ground like a brake. The closer he got, the more out of place the scene felt. A woman stood beside the car, heels on gravel, blazer too sharp for this dusty road, phone held above her head like a flag of surrender. She glanced at him, measured him in one scan, then spoke before he could. No signal. Luca nodded once. Looks like a flat tire. And the engine's steaming a bit. She crossed her arms. Perfect. There was a silence. Not awkward, just cautious. He parked his bike under a nearby tree, wiping his palms on his shirt. Need help? He asked. She hesitated. Do you know what you're doing? I won't touch a thing unless you're okay with it, he replied calmly. But yeah. I can manage. Another pause. Then she gave a stiff nod. Fine. He walked to the rear of the car and knelt beside the tire, studying the damage. Yup. Totally flat. Standing up, he looked toward the trunk. You've probably got a jack back here, somewhere. Without waiting, she popped the trunk. As he stepped forward, Luca muttered under his breath, you might not like what I find. Sometimes fixing a tire fixes something else too. Luca didn't speak much while he worked. Just pulled out the jack, secured it, and began the lift. His hands moved like he'd done this before, maybe not with a luxury car, but the principles were the same. Isabel stood a few feet away, arms still crossed, but her expression had shifted. Less frustration, more curiosity. You do this often? She asked. Not really, he said, tightening the lug nuts. But I fix things. Bikes. Chairs. Whatever needs fixing. She nodded, slowly. Must be useful. It pays sometimes. He didn't look up. In less than 15 minutes, the spare was mounted, and the jack lowered. He stood, wiped his hands on his shirt, and took a step back. You're good to go, he said. It'll hold until you reach town. She reached for her purse. At least let me. He shook his head before she could finish. I didn't stop for money. She blinked, caught off guard. Not used to refusals. Not used to decency. He walked back to his bike. Threw a leg over the seat. Ready to ride. Then, out of nowhere, her voice cut through the still air. Wait. What's your name? He glanced back, surprised. Luca. She repeated it to herself. Quietly. Like it meant something. He rode off without another word. She didn't move. Just stood there, watching him vanish down the road, and didn't know why she couldn't look away. She had forgotten how silence feels. He never had the chance to. The city welcomed Isabel with noise, horns, elevators, rushed footsteps. She walked through glass doors, handed off folders, gave firm nods, clicked through emails. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Her assistant asked about boardroom schedules. Everything was on track. But her thoughts weren't. Every pause felt louder than usual. Every silence echoed back to a boy kneeling beside a tire, saying, "I didn't stop for money." She didn't like not knowing why it mattered. Across town, miles from skyscrapers, Luca unlocked the creaky door to his grandmother's house. The air inside smelled of tea and dampness. She greeted him with a weak smile. He kissed her forehead, handed her the soup. Later, he swept the porch, checked a neighbor's leaky faucet, and patched a broken chair. Normal things. But his mind wasn't quiet either. That woman, Isabel, her face kept flashing back. She'd looked strong. Sharp. Untouchable. But when she'd said his name, it hadn't sounded cold. It had sounded human. He shook the thought away and went to prepare the medicine. Back in the city, Isabel stood at her kitchen island, untouched food beside her. She picked up a pen, hesitated, then opened her planner. 2 words. Not for business. Not for strategy. She wrote, "Find Luca." Then closed the notebook, not knowing what she had just set in motion. Corporate decisions are easy. Finding a stranger isn't. Isabel dropped the note on her assistant's desk. "Find Luca?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "Who's Luca?" "Someone I met." "I need to know more," Isabel said, firm but unreadable. The assistant blinked. "No last name. No phone number. Just Luca." "That's enough to start," Isabel replied, turning away. Confused but obedient, the assistant left with a tight nod and a notepad. For the next 2 days, she called roadside cafes, spoke to local vendors, emailed courier services, asking vague questions about a quiet young man who fixed things and delivered food. The trail was cold. But not impossible. Meanwhile, Luca loaded crates behind a bakery, cycled 2 towns over to deliver a bundle, and repaired an old man's window latch for €5. His routine was steady, but inside, something itched, a feeling he couldn't name. He hadn't told his grandmother about the woman, just said he helped someone with car trouble. Good things come back around, she had said. Luca didn't expect them to. Back in the city, Isabel distracted herself with presentations, charts, and meetings. But every time her pen paused, her thoughts drifted, back to the bend in the road, the boy with dusty shoes, and the word he'd spoken like a promise. Luca. 2 mornings later, her assistant stepped in quietly and said, "I think I found him." She came with a thank you. She left with something else. The broom moved slowly across the pavement, brushing leaves into neat piles. Luca was focused, head down, until the sound of a car door interrupted his rhythm. He turned. She was standing there. Isabel. Same sharp presence, but something in her face had softened. "Madam?" he asked, unsure if he should smile or step back. She walked closer, heels crunching gently on the gravel. "Didn't expect to find you like this." He looked down at the broom. "Didn't expect to be found." They stood awkwardly for a second before she gestured toward a nearby bench. "May I?" He nodded, led her to sit. Silence followed, but not the uncomfortable kind. "I came to thank you," she said finally. "Not just for fixing the tire. For how you did it. No questions. No judgment. Luca shifted in his seat, not used to this kind of attention. I only did what felt right. Exactly, she replied, reaching into her coat. Which is why I brought this. She handed him a plain envelope. He stared at it. What is it? Not money, she said quickly. An opportunity. Something different. He didn't open it. Just held it like it might vanish. Isabel stood, brushing imaginary dust from her blazer. You reminded me what decency looks like, Luca. I thought you deserved more than just words. She walked to her car and drove away. Luca stayed on the bench, envelope unopened, pulse thudding in his ears. He'd opened bills. He'd opened rejection letters. Never anything like this. Luca sat on the edge of his bed, fingers hovering over the envelope like it might bite. His grandmother was asleep in the next room. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that made you hear your own thoughts louder. Finally, he tore it open. Inside was a crisp letter, neatly folded. It had a logo at the top, clean, professional, and words he read 3 times before they sank in. Apprenticeship offer. Paid training. Innovation and Outreach Department. No prior degree required. At the bottom, in a different ink, a handwritten note curved softly across the page. You saw me. I see you. Let's build something. Isabel. He exhaled. Slowly. This wasn't a trick. This wasn't charity. Still, doubt crept in. He didn't belong in boardrooms or behind glass walls. He didn't own a laptop. Didn't know what innovation really meant. What if he failed? Then another voice rose inside him. The one that fixed tires without expecting a thank you. The one his grandmother trusted without question. Luca folded the letter and stood up. His heart was still pounding, but it was no longer fear. It was possibility. He grabbed his wallet and walked out the door. If this was real, he'd need a better shirt. The elevator doors opened. He almost didn't walk in. The building was taller than anything Luca had ever walked into. He wiped his palms on his jeans, then stepped into the elevator. His reflection stared back at him, shirt ironed twice, shoes still a little scuffed, but cleaner than usual. When the doors opened, everything was glass, steel, and quiet confidence. A woman at the front desk smiled. You must be Luca. He nodded. Yes, ma'am. Welcome. This way. She led him past rows of desks and wide windows. People typed fast, talked softly. Everything looked expensive. At the corner of one quiet section, she stopped beside a modest desk. On top, a sticky note. You belong here. Don't forget that. In Isabel's handwriting. Luca stared at it for a second longer than he meant to. His first week was rough. He didn't understand the jargon, the apps, the acronyms. He wrote everything down by hand. Asked questions even when he felt stupid. But he stayed late. Paid attention. Listened more than he spoke. Sometimes he caught Isabel watching from across the floor, not hovering, just present. Like she wanted him to know he wasn't invisible. One evening, just as he was packing up, a message popped up on his screen. You've been added to tomorrow's strategy meeting, topic, authentic voices. Luca stared at the subject line. Authentic voices? Did they mean him? He didn't plan to speak. But silence wasn't an option anymore. Luca sat at the far end of the long table, hands folded tightly in his lap. The room was bright, polished, full of people who wore confidence like a second skin. One by one, they spoke. Engagement funnels. Data-driven storytelling. Market resonance. Luca understood the words individually, not together. He was invisible. And that was fine. Until someone asked, how do we make this feel authentic to people on the ground? Silence. Then, Luca's voice, softer than the rest, but steady. Maybe stop trying to sound impressive, he said. And start sounding real. Every head turned. He swallowed. Continued anyway. If you want people to care, talk about what hurts. Not just what performs. Another silence. Then a quiet, surprising sound, agreement. Heads nodded. Someone jotted a note. Someone else leaned forward. The meeting didn't just move on, it shifted. Later that day, Isabel walked up to his desk. She didn't sit. Just looked at him with something close to pride. That was leadership, she said. I didn't mean to lead, he replied. That's why it worked, she answered. Then placed a folder on his desk. Inside, a draft for a new community outreach project. A note clipped to the front, co-lead with Luca. She met his eyes and asked, "You ready to lead?" Luca didn't smile. He just exhaled, and nodded. A stage. A spotlight. A young man with no suit, just a story. The lights dimmed. The audience hushed. Luca stepped onto the stage, buttoned shirt, polished shoes, nerves under control. No podium. Just him and a mic. He looked down at the first row. His grandmother. Sitting straight, eyes wet. Isabel. Poised, still, and smiling with something deeper than pride. Luca cleared his throat. A year ago, I didn't own a resume. I didn't know what a corporate floor looked like. I had a toolkit, a bicycle, and soup for my grandmother. A few chuckles. He smiled, then continued. I stopped to fix a stranger's tire. I didn't expect anything back. I didn't even think it mattered. He paused, letting the words breathe. But it did. One moment, one small act, opened a door I didn't even know existed. He glanced toward Isabel, then back to the room. You don't need a title to matter. You just need to show up with heart. Applause rose, not loud, but warm, deep, and real. Later that evening, the car rolled quietly through the countryside. Luca drove. His grandmother sat beside him. Isabel in the back, watching trees blur by. He slowed near a familiar bend in the road. They stepped out. No big speech. No photos. Just wind and memory. Isabel placed a small keychain in his hand, shaped like a tire. Engraved, "One good turn changes everything." Luca turned it in his palm and smiled. It really does.